wouldn't it be easier for us believers? Wouldn't it have been easier for Adam and Eve, right? If there was no Satan, if there was no serpent, if there was no evil. Hello and welcome to Power Cues, where we answer questions from teenagers using the scriptures. So thanks for coming again on Wednesday and listening. Today we have a very important question that I think a lot of people have, and some maybe even have it in the back of their minds but aren't willing to ask it. But we do have a teenager who asked it, and I think it's a very good question. The question is today, why did God create Satan and allow him to live? This is a similar question to why the tree in the Garden of Eden. Why wouldn't God just not make that tree? Especially since we're coming at it knowing that God knows everything from the beginning to the end. He's the Alpha and the Omega. He knows all things. He has ordained, created all things. So why would he do that? This is a deep question that can have lots of many inroads, outroads to go on. But I'm going to try to answer this properly. Now, the thing with this question is the answer the short answer is for his glory. And then that's we need to go a little deeper than that, but that is the truth. Anything he does, anything he's created is for his glory. But then your question is, well, how can Satan, how can the tree of good and evil be for his glory? What does he do for that? So we're coming at this knowing that God is in control of everything. God is in control, okay? So why did God create Satan and allow him to live? Satan is the cause of sin, okay? So now God has allowed it and ordained it, but Satan is the father of that. Listen to this, John 8:44. You are the father of the devil, and your will is to do your father's desire, meaning the devil. So here's what Jesus describes the devil's desires are. He was a murderer from the beginning and does not stand in truth because there is no truth in him. When he lies, he speaks out of his own character, for he is a liar and the father of lies. So that just goes to show you Satan, who Satan is, his character. Also, like Luke 13:16, there's a woman who's been bound up for years. And this is what Luke 13:16 says, and ought not this woman, a daughter of Abraham, who Satan bound for 8 years, be loosed from this bond on the Sabbath day? Now, this is going in, that verse is actually not really talking much about Satan or who Satan is. It's more talking about the Sabbath day and if you should heal and all those things on the Sabbath day. But we get to see a little bit of Satan again. Satan bound her for 8 years. Also know that Jesus, God and Jesus, they're in control of Satan. Okay? God is in control of everything. So we see in Job chapter 1, 6-12, that Satan actually comes to God, and then God gives permission to Satan to go to Job, and everything is in Satan's hands. God then turns over everything in Satan's hands of Job except for Job's life. So he can't kill Job, but he can do everything else he wants to do. And he did. I mean, he did everything, right? But God had to grant him that permission. Does that make sense? So God is in control. Matthew 4:10, Jesus tells Satan to be gone, and Satan then leaves. So God is in control over Satan. Colossians 2:15, this is talking about Jesus. He disarmed the rulers and authorities and put them to shame by triumphing over them in him. So you see that Jesus won control over that. So what does that all mean? In the picture of why did God create Satan and allow him to live? So we see who Satan is, and we know who God is. We know his character. We're learning more about his character, the fact that he's in control over all things, the fact that He is just, he is merciful, he is patient, he is kind, he is loving. And the fact that he sanctifies us, and we should have joy through the pain because we know that whatever God does for his children is in love. It's for their betterment. It's for them to become more like his son, Jesus. So we're sanctifying him. All those we have to take into account because the Bible doesn't specifically say why God did this and why it is okay for him to continue to be here and torment his children, right? We have to go in and out of temptations. We have struggles, we have pains, we have hurt, we have sin, all of these things. Wouldn't it be easier for us believers? Wouldn't it have been easier for Adam and Eve, right? If there was no Satan, if there was no serpent, if there was no evil. And in fact, yeah, it would. So why would God do this? Especially a loving God, right? God does love his children. Why would he do this? My answer to this is God has allowed this. God has kept Satan, because at any point in time, he could take him off the face of this earth. God created Lucifer. God created the tree of knowledge of good and evil to glorify himself. We would not know as his children all of his character, his mercy, his patience, his grace, if we did not have sin. Now, does this mean, and Paul kind of talks about this too, does this mean that we continue to sin because grace would abound, because God's grace abounds? Absolutely not. We still we strive to become more like Jesus. We work through and we get our Christian disciplines in order the way God has put it out, and we fail, but we continue to understand more about his grace, about his mercy, about his patience. We see his justice. Without those things, we would not know the whole expansion of who God is. And so I am thankful for the fact that God is patient with me. I'm thankful for the fact that God is gracious and showed me mercy on me. And I would not have that amount of gratitude or knowledge of who he is had there not be sin. That does not mean then, hey, I should sin more so I can learn more. No, I'm not saying that at all. But I am saying the humbleness that I feel because of the amount of sin that I have in my heart and the amount of patience and grace that God has shown me would not have been there had he not allowed Satan, had he not allowed sin. So I'm thankful for those things. I'm working towards eradicating those things to becoming more like Christ. He's sanctifying me throughout these years and throughout my process of life. And so I am thankful for him for that. So there's the answer again. We have, and some of these things, it is not plain and simple. God just wrote out. We have to take the whole account of who God is that we see in Scripture, the whole account of the whole book, 66 books, to figure some of these questions out. And so we have to start with God's character, his attributes, and we work from there, because if we miss those, then we come up with our own logical things of, and if we just said like God is love, and we miss the fact that he's also a just God, he's also merciful, he's graceful, we would then say, well, there's no way then that God had created this. There's no way then that God would know the future, because if he knew the future, he wouldn't allow these things to happen, because he's a good God. He loves his people. And that is true, but we're just taking a snippet of who he is. And again, we got to understand, we don't see the big picture. God does, because he's from the beginning to the end. He sees everything. And so if we start to try to make it in our own image, in our own finite mind, we miss the fact that, yeah, there's pain and struggle. Yeah, there's hurt. And I don't know all of why he does that for each person, other than the fact of, I know that he will be glorified in that. And I know that he works all things for the good of those who are called by his name. Okay? So just remember, you've got to use all of Scripture. If you don't, you're going to start creating your own God. And I don't want that to happen. So as you have these questions, as you have that, please continue to send them in. Please continue to ask. We will continue to answer those, trying our best to use the whole account, the 66 books that God has given us, because he has given us everything we need to live a life of godliness. And it is sufficient for all of our needs. So thank you guys for listening. That is Power Cues for this week. We'll see you again next week.